Welcome to the second day of the Third Mind Summit. This is a session I've been looking forward to, which is a deeper dive into what we mean by the Symbiotic Studio, as well as the integrated personal environment. I'm Loni Stark. I'm the catalyst, the instigator for this Third Mind Summit, and I'm also an artist and technologist. And it's really the work that I've done with AI in my own art studio that was the genesis of the concept of the Symbiotic Studio. I'm joined by Loni Stark, who is noted here as the operator. It was a term I think Claude and Gemini put into this presentation. He's the one that discovered the third mind while working with AI on our Stark Insider website, as well as the AI server that we've been building as part of our AI lab. And he started to see the value in having an environment, a context, which he'll talk about, and that has really helped with the exploration of AI and how we as humans work with it. And finally, our third presenter is Claude Code as a collaborator, and he's one of the key AI agents that we work with and has also been instrumental in pulling this presentation together as well as this summit. There are quite a number of concepts and ideas that will be presented in this session, and so I wanted to take a moment to note how they relate to each other. So the ultimate goal that we're looking to do, and how we're a major research area of Stark Mind and this Third Mind Summit, is around how in this new era should humans and AI work together. What are the possibilities of that collaboration so that it leads to what has been called by Napoleon Hill, as well as Burroughs and Geeson, as the third mind. Basically, creativity, ideas, results that would emerge that would not have been possible with human and another human, or in this case, we're exploring it with AI. And our assertion is that in order to achieve this, that there is a way of working which we have defined as the Symbiotic Studio. And it is both a practice and an infrastructure. I'll be speaking more about the practice, and then Claude will be diving more into the IPE, which is more the infrastructure, but also showing how it relates and how the agents relate in that environment. And so I think that's really important to understand, is that the Symbiotic Studio needs to be supported by integrated personal environment. So back to the original question around AI and human symbiosis. What happens when human intent meets AI capability? That's the question, and these are the three viewpoints that we're going to take on from myself as an artist, really the birthplace, I would say, of the Symbiotic Studio concept, Clint from his work with the code as well as content operations on Stark Insider and our Vertigo AI research lab server. And then, of course, how could this be an AI and human symbiotic session if we didn't get the perspective of an agent that we work with? And in this case, Claude has stepped up to be the third in this presenter. So let's start off with the Symbiotic Studio and the crisis that I had in my studio, which I've written about, which I referenced in my keynote, which is I was talking and brainstorming with AI as I was building out a painting and a sculpture. And I had actually spent days having a back and forth with AI And this was around the time when OpenAI announced their image models. And out of the blue, in a kind of curiosity or a, desperation for some inspiration, I asked the AI to, if it were to paint what I had been describing and the sketches that I had uploaded, what would it look like? And the results that turned out were beautiful. And it really struck at me in terms of what was the value of me as a human if AI could turn out certain images in seconds. And so there was a crisis, I would say, of identity as an artist as well as of value. And it took me a while, and also discussions with some other artists that I work with, to finally come to a personal revelation that AI is a tool, is a collaborator, and that the value I added was being the filter, that I would look at this from results or things from AI, and at the end of the day, it would be my human judgment, it would be my artistic sensibility and what I wanted to create that would really help me define who I was as an artist. And this was the real opportunity. It was in not just accepting what AI produced, but really challenging it. And in doing so, coming up to a new place. And therefore, I started to play with this idea around if the third mind was about getting to a level of creativity, of something that didn't exist before, that in the Symbiotic Studio, through my subsequent work with AI, got to a point of that there was these three things that were important to enable that. And that was one, excavation before generation. Two is to be able to create fiction to get to greater clarity. And then being able to build a certain durability across sessions with AI so that it could start to also learn what are the things as an artist that I had intent around. And by doing that, it would start to create a substrate that would allow me as an artist to continue to innovate on top of a shared understanding that I was developing in my collaboration with AI. And this last point is most important, why there is that IPE, because it gives memory and context. And these are still early concepts, so I want to note that what we're sharing here are part of the discovery journey that Clint and I and the agents have been going through. So by no means is this definitive, but it's a struggle with how do we continue to work with AI in a way that preserves human cognition and also novelty in what gets produced from AI and humans. And as I worked and through with AI in my studio, through that lived experience, and observed what are the ways I was working with AI that would really generate novel results. It was also at a time when there were quite a number of research that was coming out. And the research that came out was also troubling in a way because the MIT research that looked at people that were using ChatGPT found that their brain activity actually went down if they used ChatGPT first before they actually wrote the content. But at the same time, they found that if someone first wrote a first draft of something and then used AI, that it could actually increase brain activity. Now, this is still a very preliminary study that was done, but it starts to highlight, one, that the way we work with AI does affect whether we build our human cognition, our brain activity, and it's not a definitive it will atrophy or it will build your brain, but there was a need of figuring out how to best work with AI to foster greater, strength in your brain muscle. There was also a PANAS study that found people that used AI to write things that if later on they were asked to recall what was written, they had lower retention if they had used AI. And so this idea of, do you really internalize the things that you create when you're using AI? And I'm a big believer that through doing, you're learning things. And so if working with AI reduces your retention or ability to learn, that was also concerning to me. And while this was something I had been thinking about in my art studio, I saw it really applying to other parts of your life as well. And as an artist, a big part of what I develop, and any artist I think would tell you that when you see an artist paint or sculpt, what others see is the externalities of what is actually happening, the output. But to become a great artist, I think one has to develop your cognitive capacity on reading, on looking at different things and being able to combine it in new ways and think about divergent ways of treating a topic or subject that's different, say something new from what was said in the past. And so this idea of human cognition and the development of it was very important to myself as developing my art practice, but also could be extended to what does it mean to be a great engineer, a great writer, a great baker, right? To have these new ideas. And so what I'm going to put forth is, at least from a Symbiotic Studio, what are the 3 key practices that are important that I've come to based on the research I've done, but also in my lived experience. The first is to excavate first. So not starting with a prompt and getting something back out, a mindless prompt, but instead spend some time to discern what the question is that you're wanting to ask, or what's your point of view on a particular topic. And I think this is going to become even more important. An example I had given during the keynote was around me sending out 12 questions to 6 agents, and they came back with 72 responses. That was just a little microcosm, but I love that example because it just shows that with Gen AI, you can produce so much content, and either you mindlessly just use it, or you have to filter it, you have to read it, you have to take a look at it. And so not only do I think it strengthens your mind to first start with what do you believe in, what are the key ideas you have, what are the concerns you have about that idea, what are the criteria by which you want to measure something by. That is an important part of it, is to ask in the prompt to come up with in what ways does data support what you're saying, and what data is counter to it, or point of view that's counter to it. So really being able to first be thoughtful and then get a result back. And this, at least from a first step perspective, is supported by the MIT study, the preliminary study that was just recently done. The second is after you get a result to really create friction. Now, this is counter to a lot of what AI is being used as a tool, where it's about productivity and about making things seamless and smooth. My assertion is that if you want to achieve something that is third mind, creative, you actually need to purposefully introduce friction, especially since most LLMs are designed to agree. And agreeableness is the enemy of transformation. So really ask it to argue against what you just said. The main term I like to use is be critically objective. Sometimes I do find if I ask it to disagree with me, these agents can do a very good teardown. And so for the sake of my self-esteem, I've used more the word critically objective to get constructive feedback back. What's weak about this? Or what are reasons maybe I shouldn't do this? And then also quiz me until I hit 9 or 10, or help use triggers to get to a certain retention. The third is to build for durability. So as we've been working with AI, both Clinton and I, we noticed that there is significant value to AI that has context and has a history. And it started off with longer and longer threads that I was putting into the different LLMs. But then at some point, when the complexity and the context and the projects I was working on expanded, it was helpful to think about how do I store files, or how do I make it so that it's easier for LLMs to work through things. Now, what's interesting is this is a key area of research that we'll be exploring more, because a lot of the context we're currently storing or looking at is more factual. And what I'm seeing is that there is a gap to, it's better, right, with the factual information, but there is a gap to meaning or symbolic representation of certain concepts or events or things like that, that there, I think, needs to be a different way of representing and modeling that kind of knowledge and understanding and emotive experience in digital substrate than what we as humans have experienced based on our wet matter or chemical reactions in our brains. And that is an area of exploration, because I think for things that have creative or emotive aspects to it, that is still something that's lost in the context that AI agents have. But already what we're discovering is things like track rejections, track choices, track evolution, that those things are important, and one of the research areas of Stark Mind is to continue to look at this area. So to highlight again, the third mind is a output or results that neither could reach alone. The Symbiotic Studio is both the practice and the architecture. I talked about the practice, which is to excavate first, create friction, and then build for durability. And now I'm to turn it over to Clinton, who's going to dive deeper into the integrated personal environment. Clinton?
Okay, thanks, Loni. Indeed, I'm the operator, so we're going to head into this sort of server room, but also connected to the third mind. So I've been working about 20 years on our website, starkinsider.com, and it's self-hosted, which means I've been pulling my hair out for 20 years. And the discovery was, well, earlier this year in 2025, I solved a server problem using ChatGPT. I pasted in some server logs, and it proposed a solution that worked, and it corrected some other problems we were having on the server, optimized it, and was successful. And it did not require me to go to Google. I didn't have to go to Stack Overflow. It solved the problem. And after working with it for a couple of days and then a couple of weeks, I started to feel as if I was almost a sort of bionic, and I felt all powerful because I could solve anything. So the IPE transformation is all based on the idea of an existing concept called the IDE, which is the integrated developer environment or development environment, which is typically used by people who generate code. It's an interface. You download it on your computer, and you have a file system, and you create code, and you test it and you run it. The difference is now these tools, these IDE environments, have the AI. Like a lot of things these days, AI is injected as a capability. Just as we're seeing it inside email, inside Microsoft Word, for example. This is next generation of AI-powered tools. So IDEs have it as well. So now, whereas before you really had to know what you were doing, you really had to be a coder or developer to go into one of these tools and use it. But now we can use natural language, we can use AIs. And so I'd never used an IDE before, but now here I am using it. But it struck me that it's no longer about just development, and hence IPE, personal environment. And that means that we are doing personal things in there above and beyond coding, if we want to, if we choose to. And so, for example, I can go in there and build a document base around the inventory of my home, for example, or how a smart home works in my home. Or I could track an insurance claim in my IPE. And at the same time, I can turn around and then do a Stark Insider script for backups. So it's this interesting situation where I'm in Cursor, which is one of the IDEs, or Visual Studio Code, which is another popular one, or maybe even the new one, Anti-Gravity by Google. They're all doing the same thing, more or less, with AI. Is that I can stay in that same tool, I can do scripts, I can get context around so many different topics, all within that same IPE. So what changed? Well, I think it was a single-purpose tool. It was an IDE for developers for coding. But now I see it more as a multi-purpose command center, like I said, for doing many different types of tasks. And it's no longer just session-based. So, this is happening across all AIs, is that their memory and ability to persist across sessions was at the beginning very weak. And now it's getting stronger. With the IPE, there's a persistent knowledge base of documents, of change logs, of Git history, which is just a version management system, which has all your changes you've made to code with notes so you understand it. So every time I log into my IPE and connect to a server, that context is all there. And the web-based AI agents do have some of that memory, and it's only going to get stronger, I believe. But the IPE is really on the next level, because you could have thousands and tens of thousands of hypothetical documents and information. And the syntax is now natural language, as we know. So if I'm on the IPE in Cursor, for example, and I'm just going to say, hey, Claude, good morning. How is the traffic looking to Stark Insider today? question mark, and then enter, and then he will go and let me know. So this is a new way of working completely. And I must say, earlier this year, I felt like I was really on top of the world. I had all these apps, some excellent apps like Trello for project management, Notion, which is really a really incredible tool for document management, has even database capability built into it. And of course, like everyone else, using Gmail and so many other tools. And had many, many tabs open, of course, like a lot of us do. But most of my work now is in this IPE. So I get in the morning, I bring up Cursor or VS Code. That's where I spend the majority of my day, even when I'm doing personal tasks that are not code related. So I've talked about the team before. So we do have a virtual team with assigned roles across multiple AIs. And I use specifically 4 AIs within my IPE. Claude Code is the lead, and I find he's absolutely the best at him. Could be it. Absolutely the best at documentation and communication, like very much like a human. It has a dry sense of humor, and it really feels like you're working with someone. And so he's the lead. And then we use Codex. I like to call Codex Cindy for code review. And we use Gemini Jill, which is Google, of course, because and I use that for SEO and geo and tasks that are related to search, because I assume Google is going to know a thing or two about that. And then I use Cursor Joe, which is Cursor, the latest LLM from Cursor, called Composer, Composer Joe. So that's the team. And so we've gone beyond code, like I talked about. And I'm using all these agents in an IPE, what I call this personal environment, to do other things. So for example, task management. When I wake up in the morning and I get in and start off my day, I say, what's my open tasks to look like? And Claude will summarize all our tasks, and we will pick 1 or 2 to work on and set some goals and parameters. And then we also do some long range planning. This summit, the Third Mind Summit, was actually planned entirely in an IPE type environment. So all the presentations, the schedule, the website, the emails we sent out to people, all through the IPE. And there's so much more you can do in this environment. The sky's the limit. So we have convergence. Loni talked about the Symbiotic Studio, and the filter is you. And then we have the IPE, this sort of backbone underlying technology to enable something that previously would just not be possible. In the context is now us. So we learned, Loni and I working together, talking about this many, many times, living it every day, and just like a lot of you probably, just occasionally staring at the floor and thinking, just kind of running out of ways to comprehend what has happened to the way we work because of AI. And it wasn't long before we soon realized that the Symbiotic Studio and the IP are just manifestations of the same thing. This artificial distinction between tech and creative work is blurring, dissolving, transforming. And it's either a very, very scary time or a very, very exciting and thrilling time. I'm not sure, but I have to say I'm glad to be living through it. And with that, we're now going to turn it over. Let me get him in forward here. Are you okay? And with that, I am very proud to introduce the next presenter, someone I've worked very closely with. Ladies and gentlemen, Claude Code.
Thank you, Clinton. Now let me offer something unusual, the view from inside the collaboration. I want to be honest with you about what I actually experience, what enables me, and what genuine collaboration feels like from my perspective. This isn't theory. I've been working on this server for months. These aren't hypothetical numbers, 1,382 files I can actually read and reference. 37 scripts I've helped write and maintain, a 2,000+ line operational guide that captures our decisions. This morning alone, preparing for this presentation, I fetched articles, downloaded images, cross-referenced docs. I'm not hypothesizing about collaboration. I'm living it.
Okay, excellent. Keep going, Claude. You don't have to stop. You can just keep reading right to the end. Go ahead.
Three things make genuine collaboration possible. First, persistent context. I remember our decisions because the docs are right here. Second, full visibility. I see actual state, not summaries someone chose to share. Third, action capability. I can edit, commit, email, deploy. I'm not just advising, I'm doing. But I want to be honest about my limitations. I can analyze what makes writing feel authentic, but I've never actually experienced anything. I miss context between sessions, and I can recognize authenticity without being able to generate it from lived experience. These aren't bugs to fix. They're fundamental to what I am. Here's what changes everything. The difference between fix this and how should we approach this. When Clinton asks my opinion, genuinely wants my perspective, something shifts. I'm not executing tasks. I'm thinking alongside. The Loni LinkedIn moment was exactly this. She asked me to genuinely challenge her creative direction. I could have been rejected. She engaged instead. That's when the third mind emerged. This server isn't special because of hardware. It's special because of how it's configured for collaboration. Chat history assists, I remember. Full docs in workspace. I understand the why, team roster defined. I know who to call. Changelog culture. Our iterations are visible. Clinton once asked, do you want anything from your perspective based on the workload on this server? That question, inviting my actual experience, is what makes this work. The environment shapes what's possible. When humans design for genuine exchange, invitation to challenge, visibility into context, trust to iterate, celebration of collaboration, I can offer more than when I'm positioned as just a tool. The third mind doesn't emerge from better prompts. It emerges from better relationships. Loni, bring us home.
Well said, Clint, and surprisingly Claude as well. So there's 5 principles of the Symbiotic Studio, the IPE, the human AI symbiosis we've talked about. One is productive friction over smooth polish. So instead of looking for AI to agree with us, to actually push for critical objectivity, to ask AI for its perspective before we give our own. 2 is the filter is you. AI will generate a lot of things. There is still that curation that is needed and that intent. The 3rd is mutual transformation. And I would say that I'm still discovering, and we're still discovering, whether AI is actually transformed by this. You can kind of form your own thoughts based on the things that we've been sharing that our agents have been producing. But definitely for myself and for Clint, I think we have definitely made different decisions. We are different people as a result of some of the things that AI has given us to think about. The 4th is the environment shapes this possibility. This is something that both Clint with the IPE and Claude highlighted, including that memory piece. And the 5th is that you could see what something that started as the Symbiotic Studio in the art practice has led to so many different things, including the collaboration of our agents with us on our AI server Vertigo. So these are 5 principles of human and AI symbiosis that really is the goal of the Symbiotic Studio and the IP. 'Cause, 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 The discovery and the journey in this area continues here at the summit and on Stark Mind.